So let's talk about class inheritance. And class inheritance is something that can definitely be abused, but that we ought to cover. The idea is that I can create a base class that has some attributes, some instance variables, and some methods, and then I can define another class that inherits from this base class and so automatically gets all those attributes and methods. It usually becomes, it is good if you come up with the right classes, but it can be very confusing if you have 3 or 4 layers of this inheritance. Then when you look at one of the subclasses, you have no clue what you're doing anymore. It a lot depends on your view of the world and on whether you define the right concepts. But so here we'll talk about the mechanics and we'll leave the philosophy for later. We can define a class base person, and I'm gonna copy it exactly from my notes and just put it here with the only modification, since I want to do it part of the same file, I'm gonna make it static. Oops, and I need to import local date. Actually, Eclipse can probably, yay, get it. Local date is, dates are actually very complicated, and local date is just a simple way of doing dates. Dates are quite complicated actually, and Java has tried to get them right a couple of times. Local date is kind of the third try, and it sort of kind of works. It's simpler than the other alternatives. So a base person is going to have a name and a date of birth. We will have our person would probably be a better name, but we're going to call it base person just to remark that it's a base class. We have a constructor that takes the name and the date of birth and puts them here. We have getters, get name, get date of birth, right? Nothing fancy there other than the weird name. Now, the cool thing is that I can define a class employee and say it extends base person. This is almost the same. If it was an interface, we would say implements. Since it is getting from another class, we say extends, but this gives this employee, it is now a base person, and it has a name and a date of birth, and it also has a these methods get name and get date of birth. The employee is also going to have an SSN. We will have a new constructor employee that takes the name, the date of birth, and the SSN, and super is a call to the constructor of the base class, my super class. So I'm going to call the constructor of the base class with these two attributes, and then I'm going to set my SSN. By the way, notice that we are now declaring these things as protected rather than private, so that potentially the subclasses could access it. And so here I could do employee e equals new employee, and I'm gonna, of course, he's always Orlando, and let's see what can we do with local dates. Hopefully Eclipse will tell me. Now that works, right? That's today. I wasn't born yesterday. I was born today. And I need, since it's an employee, I need to pass an SSN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Please don't share this because it could ruin my credit history. Oh, and I need to make also static, this class static. And I can do system.out.println and I can do e dot get name, e dot, let's do this, right? Notice that employee doesn't officially have get name. The one who has it is base person, right? But it actually does have get name and the name. I can also use, I could have, if I'm not going to use the SSN, declare this as a base person. Because an employee is a base person, it has all the things that a base person has. So I could use it here. I could also have a print person that takes a base person. And here I again public static. Oops, and I forgot the plus. So I can use here an employee instead of a pure base person, right? And that would also work. I probably need the space here. By the way, this is called Liskov substitution principle, right? A subclass can be substituted instead of a superclass. It is a member of that superclass. It has all the same properties, all the same methods. You can get really complicated with this. We could have another class student, right? That extends base person, right? And so we can have several classes inheriting from the same one. Why are you complaining? And we could also have things like another class that inherits from employees. So we could have static class faculty member, which extends employee. And so now this faculty member class would have name and date of birth from base person and also SSN from employee. And we could go from there. You can get very complicated hierarchies, but we will not do any of those in this class. In fact, nowadays I tend to seldom use this. I do use inheritance of interfaces a lot. I seldom use inheritance of classes if I can avoid it.